My name is Iain Berril. I'm going to give a Scottish perspective on lice management. First, I'd like to just put our sector into some context. We produce about 200,000 tonnes of salmon per year. That puts us third in global terms with about 8% global share. In terms of the structure of our sector, we are relatively small in terms of the number of companies. We have 8 main seawater or integrated producers and a small number of third-party smolt producers. All of our production in the marine environment is in open net pens, obviously relevant to lice management, and we see this as the dominant approach in the short to medium term at least. In terms of lice management, we feel we're in a good place. We have been collating centrally our lice management information for many years now, and over the last 3 to 4 years, lice levels have remained at a fairly constant level, at what we would say is a low level. We also see a seasonal pattern to lice on our fish that I think other jurisdictions will see as well, although that has certainly been suppressed over the last few years. So we believe we're in a good place. If we look at the impacts, I think all of the impacts linked to the pillars of sustainability. If we look at fish health and welfare, I would say that lice are very, very rarely a specific health and welfare issue on fish in their own right. Of course, the management of lice comes with its own pressures with regard to health and welfare, but lice on their own are rarely an issue for fish health. There is challenges with regards to sector growth associated with lice, and that's due to the perceived interactions between farmed and wild salmonids, which impacts the regulatory environment, political support, and overall growth. This obviously feeds into economics, as well as the economics associated with the management measures that we use. So there are significant economic impacts of lice. I'm going to come on to the regulatory activities shortly, but I want to start very briefly with some of the voluntary activities and how they're managed, because they are more important to me in terms of the fact that regulation really is a backstop. So we have a code of practice in Scotland, which clearly defines and guides on overall lice management, monitoring protocols, and it gives guidance to support treatments. And with that regard, I would like to clarify something that has been misrepresented sometimes with regard to our code, and that is around treatment triggers. The code doesn't include treatment triggers. It includes guidance around when treatment decisions should be made. And indeed, those numbers are quite historical numbers, and I would say we are making decisions, or our farmers are making treatment decisions at much lower levels. We've also, as I've already said, been collating and publishing information for many years now, and since 2018, we have been publishing site-by-site lice information. If we look at the regulations and policy, we have 2 specific regulations that primarily cover sea lice. The Aquaculture and Fisheries Act 2007 and the Aquaculture and Fisheries Act 2013. 2013 Act covers more aspects around some of the specific management issues, but the 2007 Act takes a broader approach. It includes generally broad language around the prevention, control, and reduction of parasites. And what that means is that secondary legislation can fairly easily be derived from this primary legislation. I won't go into the specific pieces of legislation, but what we have are secondary legislation covering monitoring and the storing of lice data, the reporting of that data to the Fish Health Inspectorate Services, and they then publish that information, and around action and intervention levels to manage sea lice levels. In terms of management, practical management, I'll sort of consider prevention and intervention separately. And within prevention, I want to talk about more established tools first. We should never forget the importance of stocking and fallowing on overall health management and sea lice management. The use of single year class areas, all in all out production, is widespread in Scotland and very, very important. Cleaner fish are used widely in the majority of farming areas. And of course, we have functional feeds which help prevent settlements. We also have monitoring, of course, data sharing and information exchange, which are very important. We have some more recently established tools, of course. Sea lice skirts, I would say, are widely used now. They are more recent innovation. We have genetics, which is growing, and we hope to see further improvements there. And the newer and more innovative approach of keeping fish at depth using technologies such as tube net. In terms of intervention, we have established approaches, specifically medicines, and medicines are still an important part of our lice management toolbox. Overall spend on medicines is reducing, and we see an increase in focus on physical removal technologies similar to other jurisdictions. There are newer approaches coming forward, specifically freshwater, the use of freshwater in wellboats. That does require, of course, long-term treatments of a number of hours, and so it is more practically challenging, although it has been undertaken. I believe as well that we shouldn't also forget the importance of good husbandry, biosecurity, health management, and generally a focus on keeping our fish healthy. Healthy fish remain healthy, and that has serious benefits for overall fish health and lice management. In terms of obstacles, I believe we have practical tools. We can always have more, but there are some legislative challenges around using some of these tools, around, for example, medicines, around some of the site aspects. I believe, like other jurisdictions, we do struggle with this imbalance between what we know or what science tells us and belief, what we can sort of loosely term the fake news environment that we live in. That creates a challenge for us. It feeds into local and public acceptance of our sector. That impacts relevant stakeholders, including regulatory stakeholders, which has some knock-on implications for us. In terms of perspectives for the future, I hope, and I'm sure everybody does, that we can continue with good lice control. I always want to see innovation and new tools coming forward. We've been talking about, for example, a lice vaccine for many years, and although we appreciate that may not be 100% efficacious, any addition to the toolbox is really valuable. So we'd like to see new tools. Collaboration on a national and international level is critical, and I want to see that continue and increase. But I would say we must never be complacent. Lice are a challenge for us. They will always be a challenge, and we need to keep one step ahead of them. And that's where I'd like to conclude, and I'd say thank you.